You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bree and Thais, episode 32.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bree Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Oh, hey!
Good morning. Jinx.
Good morning. Thais Sky here.
And Bree Seeley.
Coming to you
from Los Angeles.
Monday morning.
Hey.
What's that?
Someone told us, or someone called us their coffee not too recently.
Hey, if this podcast is what's gonna help you get the fuck off caffeine, I will be happily of service.
Well, I was thinking more get out of bed in the mornings.
Okay, well, whatever. Same thing. Listen, I gave up caffeine 6 years ago. It's been the best thing in my entire life. I highly recommend it. You do not need any drug to wake you up. Life is amazing. You don't need that shit.
Well, except us. We can be your drug.
We can be your drug. I mean, consciously your drug.
Right.
And intentional.
We're a very spiritual drug.
Taking it way too far.
Oh, goodness. All right. And we're back. So, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. We are so happy you're here. As usual, we have a phenomenal guest coming up. But first, we wanted to share with you that we have an amazing event in Los Angeles this week on Thursday.
February 9th, yo. It's going to be so good. It's here in Santa Monica. And I say here in Santa Monica as if I am currently here in Santa Monica. I am not currently in Santa Monica, but it is down the street. It is going to be amazing. It is at the Sweaty Betty on Montana. We genuinely have about 40 to, I don't know, I'll say 30 to 50 amazing women there talking about things that matter. And you're going to get to experience our unnetworking methodology and a different way of connecting. It's not the traditional intimidating event where people just seem to already know each other, or they're trying to upsell each other, or you just feel like the wallflower and you're terrified of saying anything. It's not like that. Every woman who leaves our events, they're inspired. They have new friendships. It's just a really, really sweet moment.
We're a very welcoming bunch, and if
We
you can't
hug.
tell,
We do a lot of hugging.
there's a lot of hugging. And Thais and I are kind of dorks, so we are very open and excited for hugs and conversations.
Did you just call
and
us
all
a
the
dork?
things. We're kind of dorks. I mean, did you hear the last 2.5 minutes of this podcast?
I have to say, I feel like you chose the only word that is no longer, that doesn't have any political connotations around it, I'm very proud of you. That was beautiful. So you compared us to a whale's penis. No, it's totally good. It's totally good. That's fine. I understand.
And we're back again. So for those of you that actually want to join us, see us in person.
We promise not to call you a dork.
Get your unnetworking on. You can grab your ticket at amplifyfebmixer.eventbrite.com. That's amplifyfebmixer.com, like February but Feb. .eventbrite.com.
You can also go to our show notes. You can go to our website, theamplifycollective.com. All the good stuff is there.
If you're really committed to joining us, you will find it because it's all over the internet.
Yeah, and pretty much we always sell out. So make sure if you're listening to this and you feel called to join us as soon as possible, because we want to see you. In other news, today we're going to talk about Thais trying to create a British accent.
Yeah, this is going to be a really good
and
topic.
How bad it is. Okay.
But for reals, we have a great guest on with us tonight. Someone that Thais... Today. What time is it? I don't even know. Someone Thais has known for a long time and is just brilliant. And we're going to be talking a lot about being an entrepreneur. And one of the things that has come up for Thais and I lately is, as an entrepreneur, what happens when you don't want to show up.
or when you're uninspired. And this isn't, if you're listening and you're not an entrepreneur, this is for you too, man. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many times where we have a commitment that we're going to do something, we're going to fulfill a project, we're going to take on this role, vibes are high, you're feeling good about it. And then a few months down the road, New Year's resolutions, you no longer feel inspired to go to the gym at 5 in the morning.
Actually, let's talk about that for a hot second because the statistic is that by now, 90% of people have given up on their New Year's resolutions.
Wow. Okay, first off,
90%.
I can't believe people still set New Year's resolutions. Let's be honest here, peoples. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's coming from this idea that you're broken. You're broken because you don't have the weight that you want or the look or whatever, the money. And so you're going to create these really hard ass goals um, that's going to somehow change everything, but you're not really willing to do anything different. But because it's coming from a place of brokenness, you're only going to perpetuate that brokenness. Okay, so the point is, New Year's resolutions is an archaic way of thinking from this idea that you have to be fixed, from this idea that you have to do things different in order to get different results, and you do, but the momentum of New Year's quickly fades, and then we're right back to where we started. We're right back to where we started, and so we're going to be talking about that today. Like, how do you stay inspired, or how do you stay connected to your original intentions, or how do you keep showing up as an entrepreneur when everything in your body is screaming to tell you to go back to bed?
So I just had a client recently call me and be like, "Oh, I just feel so uninspired." And the reality is that we can't be inspired all the time. Tice and I talk about this in our LA Lady interview. If you haven't seen it yet, LA Lady magazine. Uh, and the reality is we can't be inspired all the time. Like you can't be going at 110 miles an hour all the
It's
time
an
and just
illusion.
constantly go, 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 go.
It doesn't work. It's an illusion. It's an illusion of looking at everyone else's Facebook and seeing their perfections and thinking that you have to run 10 times harder in order to get more results. And we've already talked about fuck the hustle. We've already talked about how hustling isn't always the answer. This conversation is really about, this concept that you have to be turned on all the time. And you can't. You can't. And the expectation of you being able to be turned on all the time is breaking us.
So when she said to me, like, "Oh, I'm just not feeling inspired," like, I stayed in bed until 7 a.m. this morning, my response to her was, "Good, good. Sleep late, take extra baths, love on yourself extra hard." Like, like Tice was saying earlier, when we're uninspired, we automatically go to the place that, like, "Oh, I'm broken.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong with
Something
me."
has to be wrong because I have to be inspired. Who said? Whoever said that we always have to be inspired? Like, what illusion have we been gossip or believing? I'll tell you, it's the illusion of if you're 100% all the time, then you're perfect. And that's our constant thirst, is this idea of perfection. And then once we reach the state of perfection, we never feel hurt. That's the point. This whole running is a numbing mechanism. It's a defensive mechanism. It's a way to keep ourselves from feeling hurt, from feeling suffering, from feeling the actual ups and downs of life. It's like if you go fast enough, maybe you won't experience the ache of your heart. And this idea of being inspired all the time is it's hurting us.
It's a form of numbness, like, basically is just kind of, if you're inspired all the time, you're essentially shutting off something else about your life that you're trying to escape from or not face. And so my advice to her was, let yourself be uninspired.
I just want to go back onto the pedestal of fucking the hustle. I know we've already talked so much about this, but I just keep seeing it over and over and over again all over social media. Like, peoples, my loves, my dear listener, I love you so much. Please do not believe that the answer to your goals is to do harder. Please, for the love of your body, your health, your stress, doing more, working harder, working evenings, working Sundays, working every day, it's not the answer.
And it's being glamorized a lot right now. And so, an invitation we would have to you is to just start becoming conscious of it. Start seeing where this is glamorized in our culture, in our society, and choose something different for yourself. So, one of my favorite questions, and I ask myself this every single day in my morning practice, is what do I need today? And so, when you're feeling uninspired, great. Like, let yourself be uninspired. On the days you don't want to show up, take some time and don't show up. Like, give yourself that space to just be. And when you can just be, ask yourself, what do I need right now?
So, I talk a lot about self acceptance, and I talk a lot about loving ourselves, and this isn't some illusion that someday in the future you'll be able to love yourself. It happens actually in every moment, and it starts by recognizing when you're feeling and experiencing emotions and things that aren't desirous, like feeling uninspired. And then instead of approaching this feeling of being uninspired with the immediate, this is wrong, I have to fix it, which I see it all the time, even in the spiritual conversation, where it's like, I'm just gonna go sweat this out. Like, I'm just feeling so not good right now. So I'm just gonna go to yoga and I'm just gonna meditate on this and I'm just gonna feel better. And while yoga and meditation and these healing modalities are extremely beneficial and they're so useful, especially when we are feeling low and uninspired. If you're looking at these things as a tool to prevent you from feeling what you're feeling, it's not going to work. It's going to be a short term band aid that does not address the long term ache that's been dying inside of your heart, waiting for you to acknowledge. So if you're feeling uninspired, this is a grand opportunity for you to experience this uninspiration, to really be in this uncomfortable experience of being fucking human and allowing this moment to be fully what it is, which is you're not inspired, you're not motivated. Can that be okay? One of my favorite mantras that I use all the time is this too is okay. This too is allowed in my experience of this moment. I'm allowed to be with this. I can be with this. And the more that we can just honor the experience, honor feeling uninspired, honor the limitation of the human body, of the fact that we experience this thing called fatigue, the fact that we experience this thing called stress, and take a moment to slow down and be with it, is the moment that we open an invitation to shift. That's when we create space to allow miracles to occur. That's when we create space to see the situation from a different perspective. That's when we create a shift to have something happen or an idea come into your mind that may be radically different than anything you've ever thought of before. So be uninspired, my love. Open up to being fully uninspired. Relish in your uninspirational. Don't fight it, because fighting is only going to create more chaos in your body and in your mind.
So, honestly, one of my favorite days in 2016 was a day when I was feeling supremely uninspired. Like, Thais and I got on the phone and I was like, I don't want to show up today. I don't want to do
No,
anything.
no, this is
I
not how.
don't
This is not what Bree says. No, if one of us doesn't want to show up, we'll call each other and be like, "Can my boss let me off today?"
So, because we're co-bosses, instead of showing up that day on that specific day, as co-bosses, we made an executive decision to not show up
We did
and
not.
show up somewhere
We
else.
did show up somewhere else.
We showed up at the spa. And we spent hours laying on the heated jade floors just napping
Yeah.
and being present. And we kicked around some ideas that day, but we really opened up our hearts and allowed ourselves to be uninspired. And it was really, I mean, we literally spent hours napping on a jade floor, and it was one of my favorite days of 2016. And we were feeling uninspired.
And that's okay. So many of you that are listening may work a corporate job, and you may be like, well, good luck, easy for you to say. You get to just go to a spa during a weekday and I have to show up for work. No, no, we were both there too. We know that the pain is real, the struggle is real. When there are days when you don't want to show up and you have to do a presentation, you have to show up for your colleagues. And in those days, I really encourage you to take it moment by moment, breath by breath. Do this one task now. Focus on this task now. Like instead of like awfulizing and creating a whole drama about the future, just take it one step at a time, knowing that this is exactly where you're meant to be, and I don't get why and you don't get why, and that's okay. We don't have to get it, but we can really honor and be in a sort of reverence to the unfolding moment that is right now. Even if we're not inspired, we can still show up. Show up is a word that I know people in the industry use a lot, and it could mean so many things. But the way I see it, showing up means just being fully present to what is coming in your moment, coming in at any given moment. That is showing up. It's, in the Four Agreements by what's his name,
No idea.
Michael Ruiz, Miguel, or something. A great book, The Four Agreements. One of the agreements is to, do your best. Do your best in every moment. But he acknowledges that that looks different moment by moment. What doing your best looks like one day looks radically different when you're sick and in the hospital the next day, right? That's the same thing that we're saying here. By showing up when you're uninspired, it means being open to this moment, inviting this moment in, not resisting what is happening here, because it is that resistance that actually creates the suffering, not the initial experience of the emotion.
And so, if you are working a corporate job and you're being particularly uninspired that day and you're not able to just cut out and go lay on the jade floor, like what do you need? What can you do right now to infuse a little bit more pleasure into this moment? Do you need to go run downstairs to Starbucks and get your favorite chai latte? Do you need to like put on some headphones and maybe rock out to your favorite song for a hot
Hmm.
second? Do you need to like go take a walk around the block? Like little things, anything that you can do to be okay, like to feel good, to feel okay, to feel safe, like whatever that is for you
Yes.
in that moment. So, yes, we get the luxury of cutting out and maybe going to the spa one day.
But
But
then we also sometimes don't have that luxury.
no, I
There are
mean,
so many
yesterday,
Sunday nights, Saturday mornings that we're fucking waking up at crack of dawn to work, right? So we have the challenge too of always feeling like we have to show up in our business, always feeling like we have to be constantly inspired in our business. We're two teachers, coaches, mentors, whatever we want to call ourselves. We're in a position of public figure, of having to present ourselves in a certain capacity in every given moment, and it can feel very overwhelming sometimes to turn that off. I talk to my friends who are in the corporate world who don't quite understand my industry, and they're like, I was doing something on social media and they're like, "Are you, you always have to be on social media, don't you?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do. It's my brand, it's my business. Social media strategy is part of my job." And I'll go, and I was like, and there is not really a moment that I turn that off because it's my brand. I always have to be representing my brand. And I'm like, "Wow, that sounds fucking exhausting." I'm like, "In some ways it is. And in some ways I bear this burden happily because this is what I get to do with my life. And at least I don't have to respond to people and do, the other things." But it is a constant assessing of how we're feeling, and something that Brie and I have been learning together and supporting each other a lot these past few, well, since we've met, since August really, and being in this entrepreneurial journey is,
last August, by the way, it's been our 2-year anniversary is coming up
oh my
very
gosh,
quickly.
not very quickly. That's like
Well,
in 8 months.
our 2-year anniversary,
Yeah. Oh yeah, okay.
our 2-year friend anniversary.
So one of the things that we've been seeing is that it's really, really important that we don't fake it. And I teach this a lot, and I know Brie does too, that you don't need to fake it. You don't need to fake being inspired. You don't need to fake that you're happy when you're not. I mean, you may have to, like, if you're at a job, you obviously can't be like throwing a tantrum in the corporate room, right, in the boardroom, but you don't have to be faking how happy and amazing your life is if you're not feeling inspired.
Because by faking that, you're actually going to it's not going to make you happier. It's actually going to create the exact opposite of that. It's going to make you more miserable about like, well, why can't I feel like this for real? Or like
Feel
all
like a
those
fraud,
stories.
right?
Yeah. So, honor what you're feeling in the moment. If you're feeling uninspired, if you're not feeling happy, like you don't have to fake anything. You don't have to show up as a different version of yourself. You can show up in a different maybe intensity of yourself, but you don't have to show up as a completely different version of yourself.
Yeah, I was uninspired through most of December into the maybe the first week of January, feeling completely uninspired by everything. I was feeling completely jaded by everything. which is great that we didn't have our podcast.
And great that I was out of town for 2 weeks, so she actually got a vacation.
Yeah. So, I really got to sit with being uninspired. And what was really cool is the more I gave myself permission to sit with being uninspired and sit with not, wanting to like be in my business and not wanting to do anything, the more I started to explore different thoughts, not different thought processes, different ways of being, different people's perspective on life. And I learned a lot about some pretty big topics that most people aren't talking about because I was doing research because I wasn't feeling inspired to show up in my business. So I was really actually using that uninspiration to educate myself in a lot of different things that are going on in the world right now with politics and racism and genderism and all the isms and ableisms and bodyisms and educating myself so that I can show up when I was ready to show up in my business in a bigger, better way. So you never know why you may be uninspired. It may actually be a call for you to slow the fuck down. And this is how it's showing up. This is how it's manifesting as uninspiration or gosh, who knows? It could be a multitude of things, but I always think that everything that happens within us happens for a reason. It's with always the best intentions. So that you being uninspired there's a good intention in that and then you get to explore what that looks like.
Well, and I always talk about the idea of divine perfection and, the fact that there's always a silver lining in something, which I know seems really easy to say, which
Well, it is
it
really
is
easy to
easy to
say.
say. It is a different concept to fully embody and practice on a regular basis. But like Thais was saying, like, what if there's, a reason that you're feeling uninspired right now? And instead of pushing yourself to be inspired, just allow it. Like, because if you're pushing yourself to be inspired, you're going to miss whatever that silver lining is. You're going to miss whatever divine perfection is happening behind the scenes that you can't see. And so, really, 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 I want you guys to like dive into this idea of it's okay. In fact, I would go past that. I would say it's normal to
It's
be
normal,
uninspired.
it's okay, it's healthy. It's healthy to experience the full range of human emotions and human experiences. Like, it's healthy, it's good. If you're inspired all the time, I would be a little worried. And if anyone tells you that they're inspired all the time, they're fucking lying. Right? Like,
Mic drop.
we're here for a holistic experience of the turbulence of life on this planet and being uninspired and not wanting to quote unquote show up in your life, in your business, in whatever department. That's okay. There are times when my boyfriend and I have to have some serious conversation about something that happened or whatever, and I don't feel like showing up in our relationship. Like, I don't feel like being present in the relationship, and I just tell him. I tell him because we're in an honest, open relationship where we can have these types of conversations, and he'll always be like, "Okay, and how can we move through this? Like, how can I support you through this?" And when he approaches it from this perspective of, "Okay, this is happening, this is coming up, what can we do to love on this?" It helps to recalibrate my thinking that this is not a problem that needs a solution, needs to be fixed, needs to be changed. This is an opportunity to look at what may be going on underneath. A lot of people say that they're uninspired because they hate their jobs. Well, what are you going to do about it then? Are you going to continue to be uninspired in a job that you hate? Or are you going to be a miracle worker and bring inspiration into your job? Or are you going to look for ways to find another job?
And sometimes even I would say finding another job isn't even the solution because you
Isn't
could
or is?
isn't.
Yeah.
Like because if you're feeling uninspired and you're not dealing with the underlying issues of why you're uninspired,
Oh, yeah.
it could not be the job.
Yeah.
And getting a new job
Oh, yeah.
isn't going to fix
We
anything.
always say that's the boss, right? Like, oh, I hate my boss. If I just had a better boss. And then we go to a completely different company and we somehow manifest the same boss, just in a different outfit.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a really good chance that it's not, I mean, let's be real, it's never the external circumstances,
No.
ever.
Yeah.
It's always an internal thing. So if you're feeling uninspired, give yourself some space to, like, let that exist and really identify the underlying root cause of it because just changing your circumstances is probably not going to fix whatever that inner, imbalance or whatever it is that's happening within you. And so,
So, Brie,
yeah.
when was the last time that you were uninspired, and what was the underlying reason?
I mean, I was particularly uninspired in Bali to do any work. I think that was a multitude of different reasons, but part of it is that, I came upon some knowledge in Bali of, I've been, teaching a lot of manifestation, teaching a lot of like helping people to be in their fifth, sixth, and seventh chakras. And I got some information that that's just not sustainable. And I was feeling that, like I had been feeling the burnout of staying in my upper
Mm,
chakras. And so every day I was in Bali, I asked for a miracle. I asked for a surprise. I asked for something, fun, new to come into my experience, and ended up having a healing session where she helped me to see a new perspective of how I'm now teaching and leading and coaching.
I love it.
So, plus, granted, I was inspired in many other ways in Bali, just
Totally.
not so much in like, talking to clients or like that kind of stuff while I
Yeah,
was there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. See, and it's good. It's so good. And I love what Brie asks. I think that everyone should ask this all the time. Like, one, let me be a miracle worker today. And two, let me be open to miracles today. Let yourself be surprised by life. Life is so good. And we are constantly showered with gifts. We just don't often open up our eyes enough to see them. So I love
Hmm.
that you did that. That's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Any particular uninspirational, well, other than December, or is that your.
Yeah, that was my big one. I mean, just massively uninspired. You won't believe how much Netflix I watched, how many naps I took, how
I
many,
can go online and check.
how many, nights I cried and just release. And it's very easy to think, oh, there must be something wrong with me. But, I was feeling the energy of the collective too. There's a lot of shifts going on in the world, but I was experiencing just a lot of my own shifts and breakdowns. And I didn't resist it. I really let myself be torn down by life. And just now I'm starting to pick up the pieces and try to understand what I am building from that break. But it's just really, really good. It's really good. I love to play with the tarot, getting a little woo here. And there's a tarot card that's the tower. And the tower represents just complete destruction, usually unexpected destruction of everything. It's like the actual image of this card is a tower, like a castle tower, being destroyed. And it's exactly what it is. It's an indication of an area of your life where your current thoughts, belief systems, and whatever is just no longer going to support this new life that you want to create. And that's the whole point, right? Like, if we want change, if we want newness, if we want a new level of money, if we want a new level of impact, if we want a new level of whatever, it's so easy to want that. But what we don't often sign up for, but what's an essential element in the growth of that new thing is the destruction of the old. Right? We have to tear away the old before we create the new. So I feel like that was my uninspired December, is to tear away, and even a bit into January, is to tear away the old that I didn't even know was old, so that I can be born into, or not me, but so that things can come together and be born in ways that are quite miraculous.
I love it.
It was really good. But
Well,
yes,
let's bring on Miss Nicole. We're going to talk to her about showing up as herself.
Nicole is amazing. You
Some
guys are going to love
self
this.
care, some
Yes.
entrepreneur talk. It's going to be really good. So, and for those of you again in LA, join us on Thursday. Grab your tickets. We can't wait to give you a good squeeze and cheers
Yes.
some Le Grand Cortage with you.
So
So,
good. All
all right.
right. Jinx.
Jinx.
Oh my. All right, ladies, and the one gentleman that probably listens to our podcast. We're so excited to have Nicole on the show. Nicole is a dear friend of mine from my life in DC, and every time I go back home, I make efforts to see her because she is just such an incredible person. She's sweet, she's funny, but she's also a really incredible project manager for entrepreneurs. And so it's really, really cool to sit down with her and get champagne and talk about business and life. And she just has the coolest perspective on things. So, Nicole, I'm so happy that you're joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Before we jump in, let me tell people a little bit more about you. Nicole Jackson runs a boutique project management agency that launches projects for superstar entrepreneurs who know their time is better spent in the big picture than the intimate details. Nicknamed the project designer for her special brand of high-touch, extra supportive management style, Nicole is on a mission to show people exactly how happy and fulfilled they can be when they're playing in their zone of genius, not trying to handle everything at once.
Wow, I love that, Nicole. So tell us, what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
Great question. So for me to really lead an amplified life, it means that I have to show up as myself every single day, because I know when I show up as myself 100%, whatever is created in those moments is in complete alignment. And when I know and I feel like I'm completely aligned, that's when I'm actually able to amplify naturally and to grow and really expand and reach and impact more people. But it starts with me showing up as myself every day. And that can be a practice.
Yeah. Tell us more about what exactly do you mean as show up as yourself? Because, playing devil's advocate, I could say, who else would you be showing up as? But I know exactly what you mean. I just want you to kind of get into your own words about what exactly does it mean for you to show up as yourself?
Yeah, so I think as someone who's been a manager, I mean, I'm a project manager. I have a team of project managers. I'm someone who has to show up every day and help people in their businesses. A lot of times for myself, I think, and I think this might not just be for managers, but it's like, okay, like, how do I show up? Do I have to be strong, or do I sound stupid if I say something this way? Or like, how is this going to be perceived? Or maybe I should act this way and then I'll get this type of a result. And I think that this is something that was ingrained in my head from probably like years of, well, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So from that, but then also working in corporate for, 8 years plus, and, really feeling like I had to fit in to this certain type of person, or feeling like I had to be someone else, and not necessarily embracing who I am. And that's part of the reason why I started my own business, was to really show up as myself every day, and more specifically to be able to be honest, be truthful, to be myself. And that's what I realized. Even when I was in corporate, I made the decision to be a little bit kinder to myself, to feel more confident with how I was showing up, with what I was saying. And it helped my performance. It helped my performance when I worked in corporate, when I made that decision. And now it helps my performance running my own business.
So one of the questions I get a lot from people is like, do you always have to be on? Like, do you always have to get up and be like, I'm going to be, I'm deciding to show up fully today as myself? Like, is that, so what happens on the days when you wake up and you're like, I don't want to show up fully today?
I think that's okay, because I think if you're being yourself and you're being truthful to yourself, then the truth is that you just don't really want to get out of bed in the morning, or you want to maybe schedule in some more breaks for yourself, or maybe instead of taking this meeting, that you're not going to get anywhere. And so it's better to reschedule it. So I think that I think that really being able to listen to yourself, and, if you feel like, showing up fully as myself is, from my perspective, being like honest and open. But I think those moments where I feel like I may need a little bit more self-care and taking care of myself in that way, and scheduling in more breaks and that sort of thing, I think that is me showing up as myself, as, that raw kind of like vulnerable person. And yeah, sometimes I have to pull it together, like sometimes there'll be, a meeting that'll be like a 90-minute or 2-hour meeting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can pull through this. But it's not because, I don't feel well. It's just because, I have to kind of take a step back and really step into my power of like leading a call for 90 minutes to 2 hours. But I think it really comes down to self-care. And so when that is the case, where I do have to show up for a call, I take, 20 to 30 minutes beforehand, and I put on some music and I dance and I get that energy. I practice and I prep. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And so
Mhm.
showing up every day and doing the best that you can every day is a daily commitment and a daily ask of what does that look like for me in my life right now. So I love that you said that, Nicole, because I think that's what a lot of women get trapped into believing, like what you talked about, the recovering perfectionist, is where you feel like you have to show up in a specific way every single day. You have to have the same morning practice every single day in order for it to count. You know, you have to do your yoga practice and be this flexible every single day or else you're a failure. And I feel like it keeps a lot of women from showing up and from doing their best and from putting themselves out there.
Well, and I think sometimes it's also having difficult conversations. Like sometimes it's doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, but at the end, like you know that it's in the best interest of yourself. For example, leading and running my own business. I mean, there's conversation and managing people. Like there's times where someone's not performing and I have to talk to them about it. And there's times where maybe I have a client and it's not a good fit and I have to release them, or, those types of things happen naturally, whether you have a business or you don't. There would be times where you have to have those difficult conversations. But if in those moments, you can really tap into being open, being vulnerable, telling the truth, it for myself, at least, it brings me back to I'm in alignment. I'm having these difficult conversations because it's bringing me back to myself. It's bringing me back into alignment.
That's amazing. And one of the things that is still sticking into my head was the bio that Bree read for you that said, you love doing your work to support other people operate from their zone of genius.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that so much. I've just been recently really thinking about Zone of Genius. I had a coffee date with a friend who was like, I'm really, really good at teaching yoga. Like I'm really good at it. And I can do a great job teaching yoga. She goes, but that's not my zone of genius. I'm not great at it. And I want to be focusing my time and efforts doing things that I'm really great at. And it made me rethink some things about what I've been doing that may not necessarily be in my zone of genius. But I would love for you to talk a little bit more about what does zone of genius mean for you and how do you know if you're operating in your zone of genius?
Yeah, for me, it's more of a practice of doing more of what I love every day. And I tell this to my clients. I tell it to the students that I teach who are interested in becoming project managers. Like I actually have a practice of sitting down and almost taking an inventory on my life. So what did I do last week that I didn't like? What did I do last week that I did like? How am I working with clients? Like, what part of it do I like? What part of it don't I like? And then tweaking and making adjustments to do more of what you love. And it doesn't necessarily mean, we all have our zone of genius or zone of brilliance, which is really that ultimate place of where you should be operating every day. That's like your one true gift. And the people that you have around you should really support you in that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, tomorrow you can say like, listen, guys, all I want to be doing is practicing yoga every day. And like everyone else can just come around me and figure it out and help me do that. Like, it's just not realistic. Right. So there has to be, some form of baby steps. So with that, that's where I really like the practice. And sometimes I even do it daily. If something happens where I'm just like, oh, I really didn't like that conversation that I like, or, ooh, I feel like there's a better way, even for me, just to like work with my husband, or a better way to do things around the house. Really just being aware of it. And that's what it is. It's an awareness, being aware of what's happening and not necessarily judging it. Cause I think it's really easy. That's I don't know. I sometimes, I judge, I'm human, like, sometimes I get pissed. And so, but really being like, okay, how can we take a step back and really take this inventory? And then what tweaks can we make so that I'm able to do more of what I love, or I can do this in a way that feels better. A lot of, people think I'm a project manager and everything's like organized nicely into a spreadsheet. But actually a lot of what I do as a manager is being able to talk to people, to connect with people, to ask questions, to know how to motivate. And a lot of the management that I do comes from my intuition. It comes from my gut. And of course, there are systems and tools and all of those things that can really help support being, organized or getting a project done. But, you can't skip the intuition piece, the gut piece. And so what I also like to do with teams, My clients, it's like, okay, what is it that you're doing that you love? What don't you love? What frustrates you? Now let's figure out how we can just tweak some things. And it doesn't have to be a massive change. How can we tweak some things just a little bit to get you closer to your brilliance, to doing what you love to do every day?
So one of my favorite things that I started getting to do this year was stepping more into my zone of genius, which meant for me outsourcing a lot of things that were not in my zone of genius. And bringing on some people whose place that is their zone of genius, and then supporting them to be more in their zone. So what do you have one area, or what was like the first area that you really kind of started delegating to or outsourcing that you were like, oh, that is not my zone of genius, and I'm going to bring someone in whose zone of genius it is to support me?
Yeah, this is going to sound really silly, but in my so I design my website. I love it. I love designing websites. I like all of graphics and font colors and all of this stuff. But one thing that drove me absolutely batty was uploading blog posts, because every time I would copy it in, it would like reformat it on me and the spacing wouldn't be correct. And I would literally spend, because I am a recovering perfectionist, would spend hours like trying to put in the right code to get the spacing and all of this stuff that just didn't really matter. And so the first thing that I outsourced, I was actually still working in my day job and starting my business. And I knew that, I had the income from my day job to put into hiring an assistant to help me in different areas of my business, especially knowing that my time was just limited because I was working a job and growing my own company. And so the first thing was like, can you upload blog posts? Can you do social media stuff? And that's what I gave to her. And I think when it comes to delegating, you have to think for yourself, who should be the first person that I hire? And it should be based on what is blocking you from doing what you need to be doing. For some people, it's the tech stuff. For some people, it's copy. They just like copywriting to them is just such a block, and it stops them from actually getting out there. So it's different for everyone. But for me, it was those gosh darn blog posts.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I actually just had someone ask me on social media, because I hired a CPA this year to start supporting me with some of my financial stuff. And this woman was like, but how long does it actually take you? Like, it doesn't actually take that much time to do your finances. And what I explained was, yes, the act of actually doing my finances doesn't take that long. It takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes a month, right? But it's the amount of resistance I have to doing it because it is outside of my zone of genius. It's the amount of energy I dump into, like you said, like even thinking about having to format a blog, or me even like thinking about having to do my finances takes up more time and energy than it actually does to do it. And at that point, you're losing money, and it's better to just then hire someone else to do it for you.
Yeah, I always say like it's the amount of energy that it's taking up and the time thinking about it. And this could be said for, tasks that you have to do. It could be said for clients that you have, like the amount of time and energy that it takes you to work with a client, to work on this task. It all counts. I mean, I would have dreams sometimes about stuff I didn't want to be doing. And I'm like, well, this should count towards how much time it actually takes to do this, because I'm, sitting here, sleeping and actually still thinking about it.
That's amazing.
It almost was like, I like worked overnight. So absolutely. I think if it's something that you just, sometimes part of it is just getting started and realizing, oh, this is really easy and I actually do enjoy it. But if you've done it and it's still not easy and you still don't enjoy it and you're still spending all of these hours thinking about it, it's better to just give it to somebody else.
Yeah, there's I don't know where I heard this phrase, but someone was like, usually we do something 3 times. We think about doing it, and then we do it, and then we think about how we did it. And that's a lot of energy that could be spent into just doing it and then moving on to the next thing and doing that task and not having to overthink it. But it's so true. Looking at Amplify and everything that we've done at the beginning of our business, we were doing everything for Amplify. And now there's certain tasks that I feel like it's a waste of of my time, like doing the Eventbrite stuff. That's important. It needs to get done. It's imperative for my business. I'm glad that we did it, so I know how it works. I know the system. And I feel that whenever I have to do it, it's a waste of my time. I could be spending my time doing so many other greater things with what I'm gifted to do. And so having a support system to do these fundamental things allows for Bree and for me to spend our time leading events and being in front of our people and doing podcasts and the things that not only do we love to do, but are more CEO tasks than operations tasks.
Yeah, and I love what Bree said too about, spending the time managing your people to cultivate like a really great team environment, because managing does take work. It's not something where you hire these people and all of a sudden everything's just getting done and you don't even have to think about it. I mean, if you hire the right people and you have the right systems, it definitely helps. But, really spending time like cultivating and mentoring and growing the people that are on your team, it pays off. The time that you spend in advance really pays off in the future, because now you've really trained a team that knows how to think like you do and can actually start making decisions.
Well, actually, I want to ask you, Nicole, since you're a project manager and you do a lot of managing, and I know that you also lead your company, I'm curious, like, what is, in your opinion, the biggest difference between being a manager and being a leader?
Well, I think that really good managers are leaders. I think it kind of goes hand in hand. So yeah, I think that in order, if you think about management, what is that? Like for projects that we work on, we plan and we manage. So we're really talking with a business owner, we're putting together a really solid plan, but we're running it past the team. And then we're managing that plan and that team to make sure that it's getting done. And we actually also like to start early, like a few months earlier than the project when it actually launches, because we need to really form that relationship with the client and with the team members so that we're able to be effective managers. Because what I have found is if you get someone on your team who's a manager and it's way too close to when you're actually launching your project, they can't effectively take that over. And they also can't step into a leadership role, because what a leadership role, I believe, does is it inspires. You're able to inspire, you're able to troubleshoot, you're really able to direct the ship. And so I believe that really effective managers are good at doing that. And I think sometimes project managers that I have experienced, not just in like the small business world, but also in corporate, it's more of just like, here's the plan, follow it. Why aren't things getting done? Where is everything? Like that's really not being an effective leader or an effective manager from my perspective. It's really getting in there, developing relationships, understanding what's going on, being able to get personal with people, not personal in like an unprofessional way, but there'll be some times where somebody isn't delivering and I'll get on the phone and say like, hey, what's going on? I noticed that this stuff is late. This isn't really like you. Like, just want to make sure everything's okay. Maybe there's something we're not giving to you that you need. And like really to make people feel like they're supported. Because a lot of times it's something like, oh my gosh, my dog passed away like last week, or, these are humans that we're dealing with. And so, so to answer your question directly, I believe that managers and leaders should be the same. Same thing with business owners. I think in order to really run an effective business, you have to be a leader. But I guess that's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
that's
I love it. I love it. And so let's talk a little bit more about the managing aspect, because this is something that I know you have a lot of strength in. Like, to you, what's like the most important trait to have as a manager?
Empathy.
I think that's really beautiful.
I think it's empathy, being able to connect, knowing that it takes time. In corporate, I did a lot of work negotiating contracts. And what I found, I don't know if you've ever read the book Getting to Yes, but it's something that, oh my gosh, I've read it so many times. And I think my cousin gave me my first copy. He was an attorney and one of his professors gave it to him. And then I went to corporate, and two people who I worked with, my managers gave it to me. And it's all about negotiating. And what you kind of find is that life is one big negotiation. You're always trying to, figure out how to communicate, figure out how to create win-win relationships, and really how to connect with people to know what it is that they need and want. And that's what I believe, as a manager, that we're here to do. And so I also think that managers need mentors. It's part of the reason why, I'm training project managers now, to help them and support them and supporting others, because I think we all need that mentor role. That's why there's a lot of coaches out there, because, we all need to be guided. And even for myself, it's like, there's sometimes where something will come up and I have to take a step back, or I bring it to one of my mentors and say, like, I don't like trying to wrap my head around this. Even if I've done it a million times or I've helped other people do it, I think it's just good to be there to support each other as well.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. It's so interesting because so many times in the corporate world, I see people get promoted because they're doing really good at their job. And so they're the easy yes for a promotion. And that promotion includes coordinating a team, like running a team. And they realize very quickly that the skill set necessary to run a team is completely different than the skill set that was required to do the job that they were doing effectively. And that's why a lot of organizations, managers are actually pretty subpar, because just because you're very good at a job doesn't mean you're suddenly going to be good at managing people. It takes a different skill.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up, because I saw it a lot in corporate. I see it, on a day-to-day basis, even with small business owners. And, it's a skill that some people I think are born with it, just like a lot of, you could be born with a gift, but it doesn't mean that if you aren't born with the gift that you can't actually, train and develop yourself. And I've seen a lot of people out there who have been terrible managers, and after some like really great development have totally turned around. And again, it takes that awareness and it takes, the ability to actually want to do it and want to grow and want to grow a team. But if that's there, you can definitely change things around. But it happens. I think it's the same thing with, well, I'm probably going to get on a tangent here, but I think it's the same thing with teaching. I think that just because you can do something really, really well doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be a great teacher.
Yes.
Like that you really teach someone else.
Yes.
And it's the same thing. It's really, it's a different skill set, and it takes a lot of patience.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing, the book, The E-Myth, talks about this. It's the same thing with entrepreneurialism. Like, just because you're really good at baking pies does not mean that you should open a pie shop. Because being an entrepreneur and being a baker are two completely different skill sets.
I somehow didn't get the memo on this. Like, somehow no one told me this before I just became an entrepreneur. It's definitely a learning curve. Like, there's a lot of parts of entrepreneurialism I feel like is you can learn, and with good mentors, like, you can get a hang of. But there's definitely some parts of entrepreneurialism where I'm like, it's just plain hard. If you don't
read
have
The E-Myth?
No, I haven't.
I should give you a copy.
Yeah, where it's just plain hard, and it's like, I was not born for this. I'm not a Maybelline girl.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And yeah, what do they say about becoming an entrepreneur? It's like the biggest class you'll ever take in personal development.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
We talk about this all the time.
Mm-hmm. I've never learned more about myself, what I'm capable of, what faith really means, what persistence, what confidence,
spirituality,
what my connection to God is. Like, I've never had to deal or dive as deep as I have in the past years that I've been an entrepreneur, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's like, it's crazy. I mean, and I think, that's why not all businesses make it out there. Like, I don't think it's the same thing with anything, but not everyone's cut out for it. And I remember thinking when I worked my day job, I'm like, okay, if I can figure it out here, I can figure it out anywhere. And then I became an entrepreneur, and I'm like, oh man.
So what was the biggest surprise for you about becoming an entrepreneur that you just like weren't expecting, and you had to kind of, readjust to figure out and make it work?
Yeah, it was really, or it is, because it's a practice for me. It's being able to disconnect from my clients and students' experiences. I think, and I, in a healthy way. When I worked at my day job, I took everything because I was, perfectionist, recovering perfectionist. I took everything really I took things personally, and like, if something went wrong, it was like, oh my gosh, and I would stay up all night and I would have anxiety and, da 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 da. And I finally, like after years and again, a really great mentor, I was able to feel more grounded, show up, do my job, feel confident, have difficult conversations, and be able to, I guess it's more like an attachment. It's like I was able to detach from that outcome. And I think as an entrepreneur, what I didn't anticipate, especially after transitioning. So I still, when I was doing both at the same time, I still kind of had that, I was almost bringing that corporate detached experience to my business, and it was working great. I would show up and I'd be like, I'm confident in what I'm doing, and this is what I can do for you, and this is what I can't do for you. And then, I left my job, and a lot of things became really personal, and not personal in the sense of I would take things personally, but it was harder for me to detach from outcomes because it was my business, because, my clients were my clients, they were mine. They weren't another company's, they were mine. And so, that's definitely a kind of twisted road that I would recommend not going down. And so, it's constantly for me, the practice of, standing in my power, knowing what I have control over and what I don't have control over, and really bringing that confidence back, that inner confidence. So that I'm really able to be an effective leader. And I talk a lot about like mindfulness in project managing, because, and in leadership, I think in order to be a great leader, in order to be a great manager, you have to be able to be mindful of what's going on and make some shifts when needed. And that's what I've had to do.
I love it. I love this conversation so much. And luckily for all of you listening, if you're loving this conversation too, you get to have more of Nicole by joining our Facebook group, beamplified.community instead of .com. It's .community. We're just cool and trendy like that.
We are going to wrap this conversation up and hop over to our community and do an extended version of Nicole's interview. So like Thais said, be sure to hop over to beamplified.community. Join us over there for the other half of Nicole's interview. And before we wrap up, Nicole, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Absolutely. Head over to my blog. It's at www.theprojectdesigner.com/blog. And there are a bunch of articles that a lot of them are on business, but I also talk a lot about organization and well-being and that sort of thing. So you can find it over there.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'll make sure to add this to the show notes so that people can find Nicole on social media and on her website. And we have a mixer coming up February 9th here in Los Angeles. If you are a Los Angelesite, an
Angelino.
Okay, there we go. If you're an if you're an Angelino and you're free February 9th, we would love to see you at the Sweaty Betty in Santa Monica. It's just an amazing, incredible opportunity for you to meet other amplified women. We have great conversation. There's going to be champagne. It's going to be good. You can learn more at our website, theamplifycollective.com. And that's it from us. We love you all, and go be amplified.